The next tips and share meeting will be the 21st of October, which we're trying to keep a schedule for the third Wednesday of the month. And Chris, you want to talk a little bit about what we've got lined up for that?
Yeah, sure. So what we're trying to do is line up just a couple topics to kind of get the tips and share meeting started. So Jerry's going to talk about how he set up his CO2 airbrushing setup.
Jerry Lawson.
Jerry Lawson, sorry. So some of us have compressors, some of us have tanks. He's one of the people that uses a CO2 tank. So he's just going to go through briefly kind of how he's got that set up and how he did it and answer any questions you all have. And I'll be happy to go through how to clean airbrushes. I've got an Iwata and Harder and Steen, and then Walter's got a Grex that he can go through. And I can also talk about sharpening the airbrush needles, either on a stone or using a sharpening tool. And then, you know, whatever tips and things you guys want to share, we can certainly join in. But for the next tips and share meeting, those are a couple of the topics that we'll kick off with.
Yeah, we also are going to put out a solicitation for pictures. We'll put a PowerPoint together on stuff that you're working on. So anything you're working on, if you want to send in some pictures, I think maybe like up to 6 pictures. It can all be 6 of one subject or 6 pictures of 6 different subjects that you're working on. But if you want to send those to me, we'll send out the solicitation in about a week, and we'll put the PowerPoint together, and that way we'll be able to see it, and you can also review it later on if you want. We'll post it up on the Google groups. So upcoming shows, unfortunately, just about everything has been canceled or postponed. The Nationals, I wanted to talk a little bit about the 21 Nationals in Las Vegas. I went up on the website today. They still do have some rooms available for reservation, but they're saying it's weeknights only. But if you call the hotel and find out what they can do, you know, if you're planning on going, even if you might go, the rooms are going to sell out at some point. So you might as well go up and get your reservations. You can always cancel. There might be other people that already have canceled, and you may be able to pick up their reservation. So check up on their website. The dates for the convention are 18 to 21 August next year. The 22 Nationals will be Omaha, Nebraska, and the 23 San Marcos, Texas. I think most people are aware of that already. The Region 2 convention is scheduled for October 2020. I'm not sure exactly the date. Oh, I'm sorry.
They have moved that to the middle of June in Roanoke, or Salem, Virginia. Yeah.
Salem, yeah. Yeah, it was October 2020, and yeah, they've moved it to June 21. So whatever the Saturday, it's like the 13th or 17th, something like that. I should have looked that up. Sorry about that. Member of the Year nominations. It's that time of year. We have opened up nominations last year, and we're going to continue to do it in the future to the membership. So if you know anybody that you think is deserving of a Member of the Year consideration, let me know. All nominations are due to me, and my email is up on the website. So get your nominations to me by 31 October. With it, there's going to have to be some kind of justification. It doesn't have to be anything very elaborate, you know, 1 or 2 sentences on why you think that somebody should be the Member of the Year. Want to talk about Games Workshop. Here in Fairfax, Nora and I were going to Harris Teeter up on Lee Jackson Memorial Parkway. It's kind of right in between West Ox Road and Fairfax County Parkway. And they have a games workshop, and I didn't even know it was there, but some of you might know it or not. But we went in. It's a very nice shop. They're pretty well stocked. The guy's really friendly. The owner was there. We talked to him. He said that he does one-on-one figure painting instruction at no cost. He said you need to call, make a reservation only because of COVID. They have to set up a corner where you can go but he said whatever you want to do, if you want to talk about shading or you want to talk about faces or eyes or whatever, he'll walk you through any of that stuff. So he seemed like a pretty good guy. Just wanted to let you guys know that that is available. If anyone needs to know an address or something, let me know and I will send it to you. Okay, new members. For any new members we have tonight, the first thing I'd ask is that you see Chris to make sure that you sign up for membership so that we can get you on the roster and we get your information into the on the roster. Make sure you join the Google groups because that's how we communicate. All the meetings for tonight's or the link for tonight's meeting is going to be on Google groups. So just make sure you're up on Google groups and read the members handbook. Chris sends it out if you send Chris an email, he'll send it out to you, or we can, it's up on the website on the About tab. You can go up there and pull it down, but that's got a lot of information. It'll answer a lot of your questions. So make sure you take a look at that. So that being said, do we have any new members first time at a meeting out there tonight?
You made me yawn, Peter.
Don't start that. There's 31 of us on here.
So no new members tonight, huh? Okay. Then Chris already covered it, but tonight's presentation won't start till about 8 o'clock. He said he'd get here as quickly as he can. He had another obligation tonight that he couldn't get out of. But it's going to be Steve Suddaby talking about World War I, Knights of the Air, airplane camouflage, and markings. So that's all I've got. Chris, you got something?
There we go. Yeah, if any of you guys want to offer to do a presentation, not even a presentation, it's really kind of a demonstration or a talk for tips and share, let John or myself know, just a quick note. It doesn't have to be a big production or anything, but if there's something you like, something that you've done that, you'd like to show off a little bit, get a hold of one of us. If there's some specific topics that you're particularly interested in, or, Chris, you posted a message to the chat earlier about decals and gloss coats and semi-gloss, matte coats and things. So maybe if decaling is one of the topics, let us know, and we'll reach out and find some folks who, got some things that they can share. And, the idea about the tips and share meeting is really just to tap into the wealth of experience that this collective group has and provide a forum to show off, kind of what we know and help everybody kind of get better at what we like to do. So feel free to reach out to John and I about that, and we'll continue to work on the format. I think I'm pretty well updated with everybody on your IPMS membership information, but if you got a new card or you've just joined, you decided to join us sometime, let me know. Give me your information and I'll update the roster. Well, we need that for nationals because they like to know kind of how many IPMS members we have, I guess for their roles. So other than that, I think I'm pretty well set.
All right, thanks, Chris. Tim, you got something?
Unmute yourself, Tim. Better.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, at the risk of scaring everybody away for next month I'll be giving the financial briefing to tell everybody what shape we're in as a club. We're in pretty good shape. We did lose money though this year because we didn't have a show. odds are we won't have a show next year, at least in the normal sense, in-person show, but we may have some ideas of doing a virtual thing. We'll see. We're going to meet and discuss that amongst the e-board and talk about it. So next month I'll be doing it. Won't take very long. It'll just be a PowerPoint, and it'll show where we are, where we stand financially right now. Also, if you need to renew your membership, my mailing address is now out on the form. Correct, Mike?
Correct.
Yeah. So if you go to the website and pick up the renewal form, it's got my mailing address. So just fill everything out. Send me a check for $10 for each year you want to renew, and just mail it to me, and I will forward that on to National in Florida.
And the form is on the About tab.
Yes, yeah, it's down in the About
Right.
tab on the website.
It's in the section marked membership subsidy.
Okay, and that's all I've got.
Thanks, Tim. Walter?
Okay, the contest is looking pretty good tonight. And I don't know for those of you who know Gary Hatcher, formerly of Scalarcraft Modeling out of the UK, he left the magazine, went over to a railway magazine, but I've gotten word that he is now back, and we've invited him to join our group here tonight. I don't know if he can because of time differential, but he hopes to see some people at Nationals at some point. So it looks like they're looking at, it looks like some people are looking to go to Nationals from the UK. So it might be a good show this coming year. And there's some other stuff in the works that I'm working with the e-board on that we'll get back to you guys about later.
Tom, you got something?
I do not. Quiet on the newsletter side of the house. Or chapter contact side of the house.
Excellent. Thanks. All right. I'd like to open it up to the floor for anyone got anything that they want to talk about or something they want to say?
Yeah, this is Sunil from IPMS DC. We're dipping our toes into the Zoom format as well. We finished our second Zoom meeting last month, and it went, fairly well. I think we had on both meetings we probably averaged about 20 people, it's a less formal format. Anyway, the DC Club has been moving towards that sort of less formal format for a while, even in the in-person meetings. But I think it went pretty well, and we saw some faces which, that's the one advantage of Zoom is people from overseas can join. And we had a couple people that have left the area that were able to join in, and so it was nice to see them. And we had some good talks. The meeting is held at the usual time, which is the third Tuesday. I think we open it up at about 6:45 or so. So join in if you got time, and beats the Beltway traffic. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that, Sunil. I should have mentioned that. Also, the Washington Armor Club, I think their schedule is the second Tuesday of the month. They do a Zoom meeting also. It's the
13th.
The 13th? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it is the 13th.
Oh, okay, Pete. I'm sorry. Is there something you want to say about that, or?
No, but if someone is interested in joining, just let me know and I can get you the info. So it's Tuesday night, next Tuesday.
Yeah, and the same goes for me. If you don't have Pete's contact, send it to me, and I'll make sure it gets to him or TJ or somebody over there, and we can get you the link for the meeting.
Hey, John, do you want to mention about the Thursday, and Mike Fleckenstein, you got the information on this, the meeting with the Staffordshire Moor folks the Thursday?
Yeah, every Thursday, our sister chapter in the UK, Staffordshire Moorlands, they have a meeting. It's about 8 people on it, and they're making their presence known more and more in their contests. As a matter of fact, I think they got something in there. Some people have something in there tonight. I think the last 2 meetings, they had first place winners in both contests. So every Thursday they meet from 2 to 5 our time. That's 7 to 10 their time. And as far as if you want to get invited to that, you just let me know. My email's on the website, and I will get my contact there. Her name is Cheryl Backman, and get you signed up so you get the notification as well. Actually, the link to their meeting is on their Facebook page. So if you go into Facebook and type in IPMS Staffordshire Moorlands, it'll come up. And she usually posts it about like the day before the meeting, the day before the Thursday. So either tell me what that you want to get on it, and I'll get it to her, or go right on their Facebook page and it's there every week. It's a good little meeting. It's different than ours, is that there's really no structure. They just kind of talk amongst themselves and show people what they're working on. But it's a nice group of people. So if you're interested, let me know or go on their website.
So I'd like to add something, if I may.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Before all this stuff, the lockdown came, some folks, John, you were one who had mentioned possibly coming down and joining a Southern Maryland meeting if you had time. So yep. we are back to meeting, sort of. We don't have our original facility, and the whole club's not getting together, but we're generally meeting the third Saturday of each month at a place up in Accokeek, right off of, 210, the Indian Head Highway. So it's not all the way down here, but we get together at 9 a.m. The next meeting will be Saturday, the 17th of October. And we get together about 9 a.m. We have pizza brought in. Guys bring some stuff to work on. We have some stuff on display on tables, and just get together and generally share modeling and shoot the breeze. And I know Jim comes all the way over from Fredericksburg to join us. Just want to extend an invitation. If anybody'd like to join that, let me know, and I'll make sure that you're on the list so we have enough space and certainly enough pizza. But 9 a.m. Saturday the 17th till about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and then we break up. It's been a pretty good set of meetings we've done for the last 3 or 4 months. And then for those of you on Facebook, I'm just going to do a shameless plug. When all this crap started up, I started a Facebook group called ATS, parentheses, All Things Scale. If you're on Facebook, go look for that group, because I bought a Zoom account, and we do international Zoom club meetings and live events, and we've got a bunch of group builds that one of them's coming up in next week, the 12th, the 11th through the 17th. We're going to do a flash build for fun. And then in November, we're doing a World War I group build. And then in January, we're doing a 30th anniversary of Operation Desert Storm group build. So that's going on in a Facebook group. If you're interested, come join us. It's a pretty good group. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I'll just mention on behalf of National Capital Model Soldier Society, as I've mentioned before, we have our Zoom meetings every third Wednesday of the month. We'll be having our 6th meeting coming up. All the information on our meetings, including my contact information, is on our website. I'll type it in here, but it's ncmssclub.org. So come join us sometime if you want to.
Dave, what time are your meetings on that third Wednesday?
7:30. Usually end about 9. We've been getting about 22 people or so.
And it's the third Wednesday, right? Sorry.
Third Wednesday. And Mike gave a very good presentation on photography for us our last meeting. So appreciate it.
I think I'm going to be doing the same dog and pony show for NoVA in December. Right, John?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, that unfortunately that is in direct conflict with our meeting. So.
Yeah, our tips and share meeting's the third Wednesday, and that's starting at 7 o'clock.
And the group down here in South Carolina meets in person as well in the Veterans Center. And they have a table set up, and people bring in what they're working on, and usually about 15 people.
Mention one last thing too. We are looking at doing a virtual show before the end of the year. We just need to come up with some platforms and all. We also have a Facebook page, which is probably going to be where I'll be at. You can check our website to find out if we're successful or not. So stand by.
Okay, anyone else? All right, well, I'm going to turn it over to Walter then for the contest.
Okay, here we go. First time I able my screen sharing.
You should be able to share.
Okay. Yep, here we go.
There it is.
There we go. Second scale and smaller. Second place, Greg Richard with the Williams Brothers B10B. First place goes to the Telluride Mirage 2000C, Rick Cornelius. 48 scale. Second place, Tamiya A6 M2B, Wes Schull.
Yeah, that was nice.
First place goes to the Edward BF 108, David
Hope.
UK Group.
Another UK guy, yep.
Hey, Walter,
Yes.
would it be possible, perhaps the next time you make these slides up, if the winner is from the UK, after his name, put a parentheses UK, so that we can,
Doable.
he'll see it and we could see it.
Doable. Very doable.
By the way, as a quick aside, Walter, that 108 has won a number of contests over in the UK as well.
Okay.
He should be a master. He should be a master.
He will be pretty soon if he keeps going.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, 35th larger armor. Second place, James Backham, also UK. First place goes to the LVTP7A1, Charles Locke.
Yeah, the weathering on that was really, really nice.
Yeah.
Well done.
72nd and smaller armor. We had one entry. It was the Airfix SA2 Sam, Greg Richard. Ships. Second place, the Resin Santa Maria by Luis La Corzana. First place goes to the Lindbergh Air Force Rescue Boat, Greg Richard. Vehicles.
We need an applause track.
What?
We need an applause track.
The Dragon Long March 2E, Greg Richard. Figures. Second place, the Bandai RGM 79G, Peter Espada.
That was cool.
First place, the Life Miniatures Red Army Sniper, David Hoffman. Masters category. Second place, DML MiG-23BN, Vince Mankowski. That's the 1/144 scale plane, people.
Right, right.
First place goes to the Tamiya F4U1D, Kevin Daly.
Yeah, that was awesome too.
Yeah.
I love the background.
The special this month was X-Craft, anything experimental. Second place, the Bell X1 by Greg Richard. First place was the XB70 by me.
Yay!
Go Walter. 72nd, that's a 72nd
Nice job,
scale.
Walter. Nice job. That's a tough kit.
Yeah. It's an older kit, too.
The old one, yeah.
Yeah.
Out of the box, Life Miniatures Red Army Sniper, David Hoffman.
Yeah, that was amazing.
Yeah. That's the show. HMS Hibiscus by John Lingwood, UK.
Oh,
Yes.
oh yeah.
That started as a Matchbox kit.
That is a huge kit.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah, knowing this guy, this thing probably is water capable too.
It is.
Yeah,
One of the pictures started floating.
I would put that anywhere near the water.
He did send a picture of it in the water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, at least he didn't finish it in acrylics.
This guy was in the British Merchant Marine, by the way. For
Wow.
like 15, 20 years.
Knows his stuff.
I just looked at the block and tackle on that little boat there. I was like, holy cow, just the block and tackle itself is gorgeous work.
He scratch builds a lot of
Most
this,
of that.
too. Most of it is scratch built.
Well, on the Matchbox kit, it would have to be.
He cut down the bridge and rebuilt the whole thing, going, okay, yeah, that's going to win.
Yeah, really, really nice work. Holy cow.
Yeah.
And the nice thing about it is there was 40 people who voted this time around. So it was really good to have a lot of that participation.
So I'm curious, is the hibiscus one of the flower class?
It is.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
But the question is it a late flower class or an early flower class? I think it's late.
And it's a perennial flower class.
It's perennial.
Where have all the flowers gone?
Is it an early bloomer or a late bloomer?
Walter, no,
Yes.
no sci-fi entries?
None.
Okay.
Oh.
None. I'll be sending the results to the board tomorrow, and I'll be sending this as a PDF to our group in the UK so they can see what's going on. Just keep them up to date on everything.
I'll have all the pictures on the website probably tomorrow morning.
Okay.
I write it down as you announce it.
Okay.
Do we need an Enigma machine to get through to the website?
No.
No, just to get into Dropbox.
Just go to the gallery.
Yeah.
Just go to the gallery for 2020 meetings. They'll be right at the top.
Yeah. Back to Bletchley.
There you go.
Just
Okay,
don't
Walter.
say go to Dropbox because that's impossible.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, Walter, thank you very much.
Sure.
I understand Steve Suddaby has joined. So, Steve, are you ready or do you need a minute to set up?
I think I'm ready.
Okay. Before I turn it over to you, Steve, let me just one more time offer it up to the membership. Anyone got anything, any last knuckles they want to have something to say or?
I hope you enjoyed this dinner and on with the show.
There we go.
Okay, Steve, it's all yours.
All right. Share screen.
Yes, sir.
All right. That looks like it.
There we go.
Okay. How about that?
There we go.
Okay. It isn't expanding to the full screen. Oh, there we are. Okay.
There we go.
All right.
That doesn't look like George Papard.
Yeah, it's because he's grimacing.
Ah, I got it.
The plan's not coming together.
Yeah. Before I start, one trick I've learned on Zoom is that if the rectangle of Hollywood squares on the right is blocking the screen, you can click and drag it to the right, and you won't have to look at as much of my face, and you'll see all of the slides. So you might want to try that if part of the screen is blocked. So thank you for inviting me again. When John invited me to come talk, I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do, and I finally decided I was going to take a short 15-minute presentation that I'd made for another project, and then add on to it things about airplane camouflage and markings, which I think are more relevant to people who do modeling. Call me crazy. I've been taking, back in normal times, I've been taking world film classes at Fairfax County Adult Education, and one of the classes was on the First World War, and we were going to do the movie The Blue Max, and so I actually put together a 15-minute talk about the Blue Max so people in the class who didn't know anything about World War I would know what they were seeing. So I'm going to start out with that, and that'll be the very beginning, and then I'm going to move on to things like airplane camouflage and markings. So the romance of World War I fighter pilots started during the war itself. This was a war of mass, senseless death, people dying in the trenches in vast numbers. Often the bodies weren't even found. And so the romanticizing the fighter pilots in all the countries made a lot of sense for boosting civilian morale. And it was also important for businesses because it helped boost their bottom line. So you had, in every country, you had aviation magazines, like the one on the left, La Guerre Aérienne Illustrée. You had postcard manufacturers of various types that were doing postcards of famous aces, like the Red Baron in the middle there. And so they actually promoted a lot of this ideal of the fighter pilots being knights of the air. And that romance actually continues to this day. You can see wonderful air shows, including a very nice one up in Pennsylvania, about halfway between Harrisburg and Reading, Pennsylvania, where they have World War I planes doing World War I replica planes, full scale with pilots, doing dogfights. And it's really a cool show. And there's a number of places around the country where you can see such things. And also in serious journals like Over the Front, even in serious journals like Over the Front, you'll see articles like there was last year, was the Red Baron murdered? Was he shot down? Did he survive? And was he shot by people on the ground? Was looking at questions like that. So the romance is still there. And so we might ask, what's the personality of the World War I fighter ace? That personality is best exemplified by the character Maverick, played by Tom Cruise in Top Gun. Even though they were flying jets instead of flying biplanes, it was the same personality type. And this is based in reality. This is what the World War I fighter pilots were like. They had all these attributes: highly skilled, they're brash, undisciplined, things like that, and especially adored by blondes. So that's the archetype of the World War I fighter ace, and it's actually grounded in reality. So some of the famous aces that you've probably heard of. The most famous one is on the left there, the Red Baron, Manfred von Richthofen, who shot down more planes than anyone else. And then above him is the person who made him famous. Actually, it was Charles Schulz who made him famous through Snoopy. But he's now known to a new generation of people because of the Peanuts cartoons. In the center there is France's most beloved ace, Georges Guynemer. He was not the French ace who shot down the most planes, but he was the one who was most adored by the public. He was sick, he probably had tuberculosis, and yet he kept flying to kill as many Germans as he could who had invaded his country. Lower right, you've got a picture of Billy Bishop, who was a Canadian hero. He shot down 72 planes, almost was the Allied ace of aces, came very close. And he even was a Canadian hero in the Second World War for his promotion of Canadian patriotism and preparedness in the war. Upper right, you've got a picture of Eddie Rickenbacker there, who was America's ace of aces. He had only 26 victories, but we didn't start until, you know, the middle of the last year of the war. He was already a famous racing car driver when he started, and then he became Pershing's chauffeur and wangled his way into taking flying lessons, and so he became our American ace of aces in World War I, and then went on to found Eastern Airlines. So I want to talk some about the fighter planes, but first I want to make I want to let you know these pictures on here are stills from the movie The Blue Max. A friend of mine got from his father, when his father-in-law died, he went through his father-in-law's stuff. The guy had been an artist and did a lot of World War I and other aviation subjects. And he had this collection of still photos from the movie The Blue Max. And my friend has no idea how he got them, but he passed copies on to me, and so I'm using them for part of this talk to illustrate what's going on. So the fighter planes were generally single-seat fighter planes. They had machine guns that were synchronized to fire straight through the propeller, so you could aim the gun by aiming the plane. It was a real advantage in aerial combat. And on the top, you've got in the red Fokker triplane there is a character playing von Richthofen, the Red Baron, in the movie The Blue Max. And his plane is painted very much like that which was one of those that was flown by the Red Baron during the war. On the bottom, you've got two other fighter planes, a 1917 plane called a False D3 on the left, and the 1918 plane, the Fokker D7. That was probably the best fighter plane of the war. And so that figures prominently in the movie. And I will say, despite the fact that the Fokker D7 is very well done historically, there's a lot of problems with the color and markings on the other two planes. And I'll talk about some of that stuff as we move on. So we've got fighter aces and fighter planes, and the question is, what did they do? At least that's the question I want to answer for you. And the answer is not that wartime governments spent huge amounts of scarce resources building aircraft so that elite pilots from different countries could joust with each other in single combat in the air. That's not why they had them. So I'm going to work towards what role fighter pilots played. In World War I, on the Western Front, as you can see from the map, the Germans swept through Belgium in 1914 on their way to France. They ended up occupying almost all of Belgium except for a small sliver up in the northwest. And then they conquered about 12% of French national territory. The battle lines settled down, and they built trenches, and in many cases those battle lines did not move for years. So you had very static warfare. You can see in the upper right a color picture from the Blue Max stills of what trench warfare looked like. You've got German soldiers in their trenches. Out beyond them is no man's land and the enemy's trenches, and those sticks are holding barbed wire, which keep the enemy from quickly getting through, getting across no man's land to get to the German trenches. So in World War I, you had a situation where it was very difficult to overwhelm an enemy's trench system. It was not just a single trench; it was parallel trenches in a system that backed each other up. And so if you're trying to break through the enemy's trenches, you've got to get up out of your trench You've got to go across no man's land, flat and muddy. You're slowed up by the barbed wire. You're being shot at by people who are standing in their own trenches. They're well protected. You've got machine guns and enemy artillery going against you. So generally speaking, countries were not able to, the defenders had the advantage, and countries where armies were not able to break through the enemy's trenches, which is why they stayed in the same place for years. The artillery ranged from everything from small field guns, French 75 millimeter guns, to things like the 9.2-inch railway gun that's shown in the photograph. The point here is that artillery was the big killer on the World War I battlefield, and that's something you need to know as we work towards the question of what did fighter pilots do. So what did they do that affected the World War I battlefield? They attacked or protected the observation planes that made artillery so lethal. My apologies, you saw this slide 4.5 years ago when I spoke, but I'll go through it. I'll go through it quickly and not dwell on it for too long. In prior wars, artillery was a short-range, line-of-sight weapon. You couldn't hit what you couldn't see. You could help that somewhat by climbing a tree or going up into a church tower, or even during the Civil War, they had a few cases where they had people going up in hot air balloons and giving them greater visibility so that their artillery could go just a little bit farther. World War I changed all that. You had airplanes circling the battlefield, and they were correcting the artillery fire so that, say you have a French artillery battery over there on the left, and they can fire miles into German territory, very far beyond what they could see, because they're going to fire a shell or a couple shells, and they're going to land, and the people in the observation plane are going to send back a message in Morse code telling them where they need to change the shot in order to hit the target that they're trying to go after. So what you've got is you've got airplanes extending both the range and the accuracy of artillery in World War I. And those were the planes that needed to be protected or attacked by fighter planes. So if you've got this situation, you've got airplanes observing the entire battlefield, suddenly artillery is much more accurate and long range than it used to be. What are the implications? One is camouflage, as in the top picture. You not only have to camouflage yourself as an individual soldier so you don't get shot by the enemy, but the whole battlefield has to be camouflaged, at least any important infrastructure in it, because airplanes will see it and they'll direct artillery fire against it. You know, whether we're talking about your own artillery batteries or rail spurs, things like that. Things had to be protected from aerial observation. As I said, the people in the trenches always, the people on defense in the trenches always had the advantage on the World War I battlefield. You add the fact that armies cannot mass without being seen, and the fact that they can be seen, and shelled accurately with artillery. It made that situation even worse. They made it even harder for any army to break through the enemy's trenches. Because of that, troops often had to assemble and live hidden in tunnels for days before an offensive. That was the only way they could mass enough troops. The picture on the bottom shows some chalk caves beneath the city of Amiens, and so people would stay down there. I mean, there's still World War I graffiti on the walls and you know, stuff like that, and junk left over from World War I, because not many people get down into those tunnels, and so the troops might have to stay there for a week while they mass enough troops to make an offensive. Armies also had to move at night, which they never had to do before, and that greatly reduced their effectiveness. So all this stuff that impairs how armies function really made stalemate worse. because of aviation. And again, that contributes to the trench lines not moving in some cases for years. Okay, so that's what the mission was of fighter planes and of aircraft in general. I want to move now to national markings and camouflage. When the war started, planes didn't have either. They didn't bother. They didn't need, you know, there were so few aircraft around, they didn't need to identify who was who, and they didn't need to be camouflaged. So they, and so they started without either national markings or camouflage. But as time went on, very shortly, troops started shooting at planes. I mean, a plane goes overhead, you got a rifle in your hand, what else are you gonna do? You know, are you gonna worry about whether it's British or German? Hell no, it's a plane, shoot at it. And then worse, you also have to worry about anti-aircraft artillery and air-to-air combat as these got developed as the war went on. The French were the first ones to create the cockade that was used by all the Allies, and they based it on a cockade that was used during the French Revolution, that people used to identify themselves as being part of the revolution. And you can see one on the hat there in the portrait on the right. If Wikipedia can be believed, the French Air Force first started using them to some extent in 1912, although not many French planes actually had these before the war started. And you can see how in the photograph on the right, you've got a picture of a Newport 11 in the French Air and Space Museum, and you can see how they applied these cockades to their wings. The British first tried painting a Union Jack, their flag, on the wings or the tail of an aircraft. But the problem is, if you've got this plane speeding overhead and troops look up at it, it's going to look like an Iron Cross. And so they just ended up still getting their plane shot at. And so they finally had changed to something that looked more like the French cockade. And so the French started upper right with their cockade. And then the British used the same idea, but simply reversed the colors since their flag had the same colors in it. And then as each country joined the war, although Russia was in there from the beginning, as each country joined the war, then they used the colors from their national flags to create their own cockades so everybody could tell who they were. An interesting thing, though, that I've learned from air shows is that often the thing that's most visible when you're looking at an airplane that's flying is the white part of the national markings. You can see these against the sky in the upper two pictures. That's a replica of a Sopwith Pup on the left, and a replica of a Fokker triplane on the right. The thing that really stands out is the white part of the national insignia. So they were actually hurting their own camouflage. The picture on the bottom shows the Sopwith Pup on the airfield, and you can sort of tell what it would look like if you were looking at it from above and looking down at the green ground and the plane. The cockade the white part of the cockade would stand out. So it wasn't perfect, let's put it that way. The German markings were interesting in a complicated way. The Germans used, first, of course, they had no national markings at the very beginning of the war. Eventually, they settled on an Iron Cross, upper left, that was on a white field. And as time went on, they came to realize that it was much too visible. You wanted to be able to identify the plane, not have it look like a beacon and a really easy target. So what they did was they changed it so that it was really just kind of a thin white line around the edge of the cockade. I'm sorry, around the edge of the Iron Cross, instead of sitting on a large white field. And they used those for quite a bit of the war until March 1918. By that point, the Germans realized that there was a flaw with their national marking. The thing is, if you're looking at an airplane in the distance and you can't see the national markings, you don't know what it is. If the plane is really close, you can see the Iron Cross and you can tell what it is. But in the middle distance, there's an area where the curvilinear Iron Cross actually looks circular. And so sometimes pilots had difficulty telling whether a German plane was German or not. And so they decided to fix that problem by making it a straight-sided cross. So they put in the third one there from roughly March to June 1918, to solve that problem. I should point out these dates are not cast in stone. They're sort of the theoretical dates, but sometimes you had problems like the Fokker aircraft factory never got the word of changing to the second kind of cross, and so they were using the 1915 cross on their airplanes as late as 1917 and early 1918, because they didn't get the memo, literally, and so there were problems with these. After experimenting with this straight-sided cross for about 4 months, they decided this doesn't show up very well. And so what they did was they increased the length of the arms on the cross, and as of June 1918, and that's what they stayed with for the rest of the war. Okay, now this phenomenon of the Iron Cross looking like a circle at kind of a far distance is something that I'm going to show you in 2 slides. All right, so hold that thought, and then I'll show you how this actually works. But first, we're going to go on to the other Central Powers countries, Germany's allies. The Austro-Hungarian Empire essentially followed Germany, sort of. They, sometimes they were late on stuff, but generally they tried following the changes of the German markings throughout the war. On the right, you've got the Iron Cross of the Kingdom of Bulgaria. And on the left, you've got this very odd-looking black square for the Ottoman Empire. And it's actually kind of the most fun to explain, because the Ottoman Turks were Muslims, of course, and they would buy planes from Germany, and these planes would come to them, and they'd all have Iron Crosses painted on them. Well, the Ottomans didn't want crosses on their airplanes. No good Muslim airplane would have a Christian cross on it. So what they did was they simply painted it out completely, and that became their national marking. All right, now, at one point when watching the movie Hell's Angels by Howard Hughes in 1930, I noticed this phenomenon of an Iron Cross looking like a circle at a particular distance. And so I went back into that movie this week, and I did some screen captures where I actually found it, and I can show this phenomenon to you. In the upper left, you've got a picture of a large bomber painted to look like a German bomber, and you can see the Iron Crosses on it. And these are air-to-air movies that were taken. It's really nice air-to-air photography. And so you can see this plane has Iron Crosses on it. But if you look at the other 2 pictures on the right and the lower left, the distance is just right where you can't see the detail, and it really does look circular. And so that was the problem that they were solving when they changed the type of cross in the spring of 1918. And I suspect you're the first people who have seen this in a long time, because you just don't see this talked about or written about. Since I started talking about World War I films, especially the Blue Max, there's kind of a funny thing where the World War I films have always used the wrong cross on Fokker D7s from late 1918, mid to late 1918. The real ones at the top there always had the straight-sided cross, and yet you go back as far as Hell's Angels in 1930, or even to the Blue Max in 1966, and they don't put on that cross. And I think they just don't want to have to explain, well, at a certain distance, it looks like a circle and stuff like that. They just appeal to the 98% of the people who wouldn't know the difference, and so they're always using the wrong cross for 1918 aircraft. One of the problems with doing modeling of World War I aircraft is getting the colors right, and the reason is that the orthographic film, the black and white film that was used at the time, is terrible for figuring out what colors are. For example, in the two photographs on the left, you've got the same airplane, which has, well, it's either crashed or nosed over in a sloppy landing. And if you look at the fuselage color in the top, which is in sunlight, for the exact same plane, you compare it to the one on the bottom, and it just looks like two different aircraft. One is clearly light and the other is dark, and that's because of the orthographic film. The actual color it should be is shown on the right with the fuselage for the Albatross in the National Air and Space Museum. The fuselage is curved plywood, bent plywood essentially, and so it has a natural wood finish. And yet, to look at the two orthographic film pictures, especially the one on the bottom, you just wouldn't get that at all. So, how do we solve the problem of getting the correct color of the aircraft? I've got several suggestions. One is very good aviation museums and their websites. They will have original aircraft, or they'll have replicas that have been well researched, where they've actually been able to put the time into getting it right, and they have a motivation for getting it right. And certainly the websites are easier to see, especially now, than to travel to Le Bourget Airport and see the French Air and Space Museum. So use the websites for getting the colors right. Every once in a while, you can even find a museum exhibit that will show the actual fabric. The photograph is fabric from Quentin Roosevelt's Newport 28 at the Air Force Museum in Dayton. The bibliography that I had you sent has like 4 pages of articles and books that can help you with getting the right colors for individual aircraft. That did go out, right?
Yes, that went out with the meeting notice.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. Yeah. So that I spent a couple days putting that together, so I'm glad you've got it. I mean, it should be a very useful tool. Another thing you can try is there are World War I artists, including some from the war itself. There was Henri Faré, the Frenchman, Rudolf Stark, the German, and Clayton Knight, the American, who did paintings based on their actual experiences. And you've also got people who, like Mike O'Neill and Russell Smith, who do paintings with a lot of, having done a lot of research. and get it right. The painting that's over my head, if you can see that at all, is one by Mike O'Neill, and he actually used aerial photographs to get the ground scene correct in the background of the picture. So there's some good research there. There are a few color photographs from World War I. The French had a system called autochrome photos, and there's a few of those around in publications. And there's a couple of examples. The issue of Over the Front on the right has a wonderful article in it called Eyewitness, the True Colors and Markings of German Aircraft in World War I. And that's an almost 50-page article that talks about what intelligence officers and other people reported when they looked at captured German aircraft. And so you can find, for almost any aircraft, you can find at least 3 detailed reports that talk about the colors of it. So the stuff is out there. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of autochrome photos, but every once in a while you might find a real gem, especially like the one on the left showing the Newport. So moving on to camouflage. I imagine it was intentional, but I don't really know, that they used birds as a model for what airplane camouflage should look like. If you look at the 2 pictures of sparrows on the left, you can see that the top part of their fuselage and wings is kind of dark, and it's got markings in it, and so they're camouflaged from above by that. And yet underneath they have sort of this white or buff color to make them less visible from below. And that's what was done with World War I airplanes and all airplanes since, pretty much. There's 2 pictures of a French Breguet 14 bomber, and you can see from above you've got kind of dark colors in a pattern, and then from below you've got sort of this uniform buff color. That is hopefully supposed to hide it while it's flying overhead. Of course, some birds' colors were more fun to imitate than others, and often the Germans didn't bother with camouflage. They were having too much fun painting their airplanes. The British, in the latter part of the war, say, I don't know, mid-1917 on, had the same color on their aircraft. It was called PC-10 paint. It was painted on the fabric, and it was a color that sort of ranged from dark olive green to brown. And I put on here photographs from 3 different museums on 2 continents that show what this color looks like in various light conditions. So it varies a little bit, but it's the color they use consistently for the top of their airplanes. The French painted camouflage on the fabrics in stylized patterns, and you can see this from the color photograph on the right of a Breguet 14 observation plane. I took that photograph at the French Air and Space Museum at Le Bourget, and you can just see these blobs of color that are painted in. I call them stylized patterns because they were often fairly consistent. If they weren't exact, then they rhymed. You can see in the 2 pictures on the left, you can see a Breguet 14 bomber from above, and you can see that very dark splotch on the right wing. That was typically called a footprint by people, and below that you can see Eddie Rickenbacker's SPAD 13 fighter, a very different type of French aircraft, and it also has this kind of blob footprint on it. So they were fairly consistent, and I think you can actually tell, if you're really familiar with the patterns, I think you can actually tell which manufacturer manufactured the plane. The Germans had a very interesting camouflage scheme. They printed lozenges, hexagrams, on the fabric, and printing it on the fabric saved weight. They didn't have to add paint to the entire airplane, although often they did just for fun. And so you can see on the left is the upper. You can see the lozenge pattern on the upper wing surface on the left, and it's a little darker than the corresponding pattern on the lower wing surface. So it fits that bird model. And I mean, these are really funky colors, and you might look at this and think, this is camouflage? But it turns out that when you're looking down on it, for example, and flying over the ground, it's there's really nothing for your eye to catch on to. And I'll show you. On the right is a Mike O'Neill painting. As I said, Mike does very accurate paintings, and you can kind of see how it worked by looking at the Fokker D7 and the ground below it. There's two examples of this lozenge camouflage from good aviation museums, the Air and Space Museum in Paris, and the Albatros D5A at the National Air and Space Museum downtown. So again, these museums and paintings can be a way to figure out what the colors were that they had. I mentioned aviation artists. On the left is a painting by Clayton Knight, the American, and he's got some British, it looks like Sopwith camels in the background, and you can tell it's got the PC-10 color. So he did a lot of paintings, and there's and so if you can find those, you can use them as examples for how to correctly paint models. On the right is a painting by the French Impressionist artist Henri Faré, who actually flew with France's first bombardment group, and so he really knew what these planes looked like, not only close up, but as they moved in the air. And what he's doing is he's showing a Voisin bomber in that painting. I'm going to move now to squadron markings. We talked about national markings and camouflage. I want to talk a little bit about how the squadron markings differed from country to country. The French had an insignia which was painted on the fuselage or occasionally on the tail of the plane, but generally the fuselage. And they were often very whimsical, even odd things. I kind of like the one on the upper right, which is a griffin, you know, the mythological beast that you'd see on a French cathedral is riding a bomb down to the ground. In the center, on the bottom, you've got this really oddball thing. You've got a yellow elephant, which is designed to look like a Brigade 14 bomber. You know, the tail is exactly that of the Brigade 14. I mean, it's kind of weird, but kind of funny. So they used insignia. The United States also used insignia painted on the sides of their planes. They had some rules. It was something like they had to be in combat. They had to be at the front for like a month or something before they could put on an insignia. And they had all sorts of things, including very odd, funny things. Like in the block on the right, at the very bottom in the center, you've got a witch riding a broom that looks like a World War I plane. You know, just very, very odd stuff. And you can find these in the bibliography. I should back up. For the French one, there's a book that has all that stuff in color. and that if you want to get the insignia right, there are books that do that. The British markings were, I'm going to use the word boring. I'm sorry, but they were kind of geometric shapes painted on the fuselage. These are 3 different types of Sopwiths for 3 different squadrons. On the left, you've got Sopwith triplanes, and they've got something that looks like an equals mark standing on its head, and that was their squadron marking. In the center, you've got a Sopwith Dolphin, and the squadron marking is that little white square that's in between the individual marking and the British cockade. And on the Sopwith Snipe at the bottom, you've got 3 stripes on the fuselage, and so so they use these geometric shapes. The Germans were more colorful. The Germans sometimes had insignia, but often they used colored designs on the planes. Like, for example, on the left, the Albatros D5A in the Air and Space Museum, the U.S. Air and Space Museum, is from Yasta 46, and it has green and yellow stripes on its tail, and all of the planes from Yasta 46 have the same thing. In the picture on the right, you have the second fighter group, Jagdgeschwader 2, and all of the planes in that group had blue fuselages, no matter what kind of plane they were, but the noses were all a different color depending on which squadron in the group they belonged to. And I'll take your questions.
Steve, when you were first talking about the Blue Max, if I remember, at some point in my life, I read that the Max part came from Max Himmelman. Do you know, is that true?
I have also read that, and I couldn't tell you whether it's true.
Okay.
It doesn't make any sense otherwise, because the formal name of the medal is the Pour le Mérite,
yes,
which is from the French, and that's what Frederick the Great spoke in his court, and so he created a medal that was with a French title. But I have also read that, but I can't tell you whether it's true.
Yeah, I think what I remember is that he was like one of the first to receive it in World War I.
Yeah.
Because it was, I guess, a medal for quite some time before they gave it to pilots.
Yes. Yeah. It was really a medal of distinction, not only for military people, but for civilian people also. And it became that again after World War I. It's most famous because it went to pilots, which are well known compared to the ground pounders.
Yeah.
And so it's almost universally associated with that, but it was more general than just for aviators.
Right. Okay, and I got one more question for you, or comment, I guess.
Okay.
You talked about the camouflage and the German camouflage, and you said that they had fun painting their aircraft. I remember, again, I can't remember when or where, but reading about Yasta 11 and the Richthofen's Flying Circus.
Yes.
Was because they painted their aircraft yellow and green and red and blue and bright colors. And what I read was that they had gotten from the German command orders to camouflage their aircraft, and they didn't like the idea, so they went out and they painted them bright colors in defiance of that order. And have you heard anything? Is that true, or do you know anything about that?
I have not heard that, but nor have I heard anything that would contradict that.
Okay.
I think in Yasta 11, Richthofen's original squadron, I think everybody painted some red on their plane, and that was like the squadron marking. Yeah, I don't. I actually have a little bit of trouble picturing Prussians defying orders like that.
Or getting away with it. Yeah, exactly.
Yes. Yeah.
That's why I was asking. But
yeah,
I think what it was I read that that's where the name the Flying Circus came from.
Yeah, absolutely.
They were all brightly, I mean,
yeah,
bright yellow and bright green.
Yeah.
But that it was supposedly in defiance of the order to camouflage airplanes.
Yeah, actually, they wouldn't have been responsible for camouflaging their own airplanes because they would have come that way from the factory.
Okay.
So
they came in those bright colors from the factory then, right?
No. They came in camouflage colors from the factory. So any painting that was done of bright colors was done by the crews themselves
in the field, right? Okay.
Yeah. So they weren't. It's not like they were ordered to paint camouflage on their planes and instead they switched colors. That wouldn't have happened. But it's possible that they were told don't pretty up your planes too much, and they defied it. I mean, that's possible. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, I can't even remember where I read that, but I mean it was so long ago. But it's just something that always seemed weird to me.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, there's a lot of weird things written in World War I history that just aren't true. So, yeah. Other comments? I mean, certainly there's a lot of people out there, I'm sure, that know a lot about this, and probably know more about colors and markings than I do.
Steve?
Yes.
Is there anything you could add or expand on regarding the earlier French camouflage, which seemed to consist of, depending on who you believe, seemed to consist of just a dark a dark green and a dark earth pattern? Anything to add about that? Because you concentrated mostly on the later era patterns.
Yeah. A lot of times it was simply just it was just the linen and it was varnished with dope. And so it was already sort of, off-white or almost brown. And I'm trying to think of what some of the earlier camouflage would have looked like.
I'm thinking in terms of like the Newport 17s and the Newport 11s and what have you.
Yeah. Those seem to be mainly undecorated. That they weren't particularly camouflaged. I mean, they seem to be like a uniform color, and I think mainly it came from the linen they were using and the dope that was applied to it, rather than it being an attempt at a camouflage. But certainly it would be a better color to use than the very pure white that they had on the early Voisin bombers. Which you saw in that picture from Faray, where the plane was very white. It's obviously very easy to see, and I mean that was very early on. That would have been 1914 or 15. So.
Yeah, so I've got a question for you out of curiosity.
Yes.
A whole bunch of World War I German aircraft models to do. And I've got several different kinds of German lozenge. They come in 5-color, 4-color, 7-color, upper, lower. And was there any rhyme or reason as to which factories used 4-color, 7-color, or periods of time where they applied 4-color or 7-color? Is there any rhyme or reason to that, or just do your research well?
My guess is there probably was some sort of rhyme or reason to it. But I have never seen anything that explained it. So I mean they clearly did have multiple numbers of colors in them, but it's I don't know what factory used used what, and my guess is it's probably changed, you know, for the same airplane over time, depending on what shipment of fabric they were able to get their hands on. But I've seen nothing that really describes it. You know, I would say probably look for close-ups of the fabric that you want to, of photos that you want to emulate, and maybe you can figure out how many colors it was. But with the orthographic film, you may not.
Yeah, I was going to say, based on like that one picture you had with the, I think it was a Falls D3 in shadow and in sunlight.
Oh yeah, an albatross.
So,
yeah.
Yeah, the albatross. I mean, if you're trying to pick out some of those lozenge camouflages, even the colors were so close that on orthographic film, I don't know that you'd be able to distinguish.
Yeah, it's a very difficult problem. Yeah.
All right, I'll just go back to guesswork and have fun.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. Have fun painting your plane.
Okay, I guess there's no more questions. So, Steve, thanks. We really appreciate you coming out. You've been a great supporter of the club, and we really appreciate that. I'll send you another coin here. I'll get it out this week.
Okay.
And but we really appreciate it, and glad to have you, and you know, hope to have you back in the future again.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Steve.
I'm going to bug out.
Okay. Thank you.
Appreciate it, Steve. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thanks for inviting me.
Now he's going to go get dessert.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, Chris, you got anything else?
No, I'm good for now.
Okay, then want to open it up one more time. Anyone got anything they want to say before we break up?